working together on redistricting is an absolutely essential change that needs to take place in the state of Illinois. And we have a track record of working together on this topic in our state. I'll remind you that several years ago, Republicans joined in a coalition with Democrats to make sure that the state of Illinois could be one of the states that offered the most investment and support into the 2020 U.S. Census. We put over $30 million of funding to make sure that we could have the most complete, reliable, and accurate count possible. The census is absolutely essential, and we had over 40 Republican co-sponsors join up and stand together with our Democratic colleagues to make sure that we would be investing, importantly, in the U.S. Census. And if you remember the census, it wasn't without some controversy. And I can speak for myself that when the issue of President Trump's question about putting citizenship response questions on the census, I was opposed to that. I thought that citizenship was a question that should not be included in the census because it may do something to depress the turnout and participation that we so desperately wanted to see in the U.S. Census. So we have worked together on a bipartisan basis for signing the petition for independent maps, for initiating legislation, for supporting financially the U.S. Census, and for making sure that we had the best and most reliable and full participation in the census count as possible. So it's with that spirit of bipartisanship that I was very pleased to be appointed by Leader Durkin to the House Redistricting Committee, where we've had over 20 different hearings over the last several weeks in different parts of the state of Illinois, either virtually or sometimes in person. And consistently, at each and every one of these hearings, we have had witnesses that step forward and demonstrate and testify to the importance of using U.S. Census data to draw the redistricting maps in the state of Illinois. Again and again, witnesses have testified about how important the census was to them and how hard they worked as a volunteer, as a community organizer, to make sure that we had the best possible participation in the U.S. Census. These same witnesses have again and again stated that one of the things they're most worried about is the use of ACS data, American Community Survey data, as a potential substitute as the data source for redistricting. And so imagine now my bewilderment as all of these witnesses have testified that we learn that House Democrats intend to very much use American Community Survey data as the mechanism for which they will draw legislative maps and present them to the people of Illinois. I really find it absolutely astounding that this could be the decision point for House Democrats, and I find it completely unacceptable. Particularly, the reason I brought up the issue of the citizenship question, the American Community Survey is a very unreliable data set that asks 3 questions about citizenship within the sample survey that is done each and every year. So American Community Survey data undercounts diverse communities because of some of those citizenship questions, and it's also an unreliable sample with data that includes information going back over 5 years. The importance of the census cannot be overstated, and the bipartisan cooperation that was achieved through the census is an important building block that cannot and should not be tossed away now here in this moment in the state of Illinois. There's only one reason that we would not use census data to draw legislative maps, and that's so that the Democrats can ram through a partisan map right now before the June 30th deadline so that they can avoid the need to work together in a bipartisan fashion with a constitutional bipartisan commission that would be initiated after the June 30th deadline. I think it's important that we be very clear about what's at stake here and the dangerous games that Democrats are playing in absolute contradiction to their past words, campaign pledges, and even votes that they have taken with Democratic leaders here in the state of Illinois. To remind you of some of those things, I'm pleased to turn over the microphone now to our Deputy Republican Leader of the House, Representative Dan Brady.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Oh, excuse me, thank you. The mask. It's my pleasure to be here as well. I'm Representative Dan Brady. I represent the 105th Legislative District, and there's a saying that says, the more things change, the more things stay the same. This will be my second redistricting process that I'm headed into, and we're hoping that saying is not true when it comes to the redistricting process this time. And we're hoping, and we're hopeful because of comments that Governor Pritzker has made regarding this process back in 2018 when Governor Pritzker was then candidate, Pritzker. And the question was posed to him, would you pledge as governor to veto any state legislative redistricting map proposal that is in any way drafted or created by legislators, political party leaders, or their staffs or allies? The governor at that time responded, yes, I will pledge to veto. We should amend, in his words, we should amend the Constitution to create an independent commission to draw legislative maps. But in the meantime, he urged Democrats and Republicans to agree to an independent commission to handle creating a new legislative map. And we are hopeful that the governor will stand by what his words were in 2018 as we continue to go through the legislative redistricting process. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the House Republican leader, Representative Jim Durkin.
Thank you, Leader Brady, and Leader Spain. It's good to be here. Our purpose today is to remind members of the General Assembly, both the House and the Senate, but also Illinoisans, about commitments that have been made. Commitments that have been made every election cycle, whether it's the governor, members of the House and the Senate. Everyone has campaigned on fair maps. And just most recently, a number of freshmen who were elected to Springfield promoted the fact that they are coming down here to clean house, get rid of the old way, and support fair maps. So we want to remind them of the commitments that they've made to get elected. So first and foremost, the Speaker of the House. When we started back in January, there was this new vision, high hopes of a new day in Springfield. The first time we've had a new speaker in over 36 years. A new day of hope and progress, and that was touted by Speaker Welch in a number of articles and interviews, and particularly when it comes to the issue of redistricting. And just recently, within the last 2 months, back in January, to the Sun-Times, he was asked by, I believe it was Mark Brown, and his quotes were, "I believed in fair maps since I've been in the legislature." This is in January. And we're going to begin this process. We're going to work with Democrats and Republicans. We're going to work with the Senate. We're going to work with the governor. Remember that if we are not doing this in partnership, we already have a difficult task ahead of us. And it's only going to get more difficult if we don't do this with all voices around the table. That's the new hope, the new vision, the new style that we're seeing out of the new Speaker of the House of Representatives. But I also want to go back in time in 2016 when there was a vote in the House of Representatives, House Joint Resolution 58, which was sponsored by a former member, a Democrat. And this is what then Representative Welch penned to a local newspaper, which you will all get a copy of if you don't have it. It's called the Village Free Press. These are his words. "To address these issues, I am supporting House Joint Resolution Constitutional Amendment 58, which is a comprehensive bipartisan measure that will put an independent commission in charge of drawing state legislative district boundaries and protect minority representation. The commission will be made up of 8 members appointed by the Chief Justice of the Illinois Supreme Court and the most senior justice from the opposing political party. Current and recently elected officials are disqualified from serving as our lobbyists, as our business owners who have contracts with the state, and also state employees." This proposal, this is Speaker Welch, not too long ago, is a win-win for Illinois. Representative Welch in 2016. Fair maps are a win-win for Illinois. First, the measure will ensure that Illinois meets federal requirements under the Voting Rights Act to protect minority representation. In addition, members of the Independent Commission will be required to reflect the ethnic, gender, and racial demographics of Illinois. These are important protections that will prevent minority populations from being unfairly lumped into as few legislative districts as possible as a way to dilute their representation. He championed that issue, supported it, and talked at great length of the fairness and how this protects minority communities. In addition, this measure will make the redistricting process more transparent and take the process out of the hands of elected officials, which many of my constituents and residents across Illinois strongly support. The independent commission will be required to hold 15 public hearings throughout the state of Illinois before providing a plan. So that bill passed with, that constitutional amendment passed with 105 votes, and 31 of those people who voted for that bill in 2016 are current members of the Democrat caucus. And as I said earlier, every new freshman that is on the Democrat side of the aisle championed fair maps in their campaigns over the last year. So I find it interesting that the chairman of the committee, Representative Lisa Hernandez, recently said a few weeks ago that about a Senate Republican proposal. And it said, a few weeks ago, the Senate Republicans, with the support from our caucus, introduced the same exact language as in 2016 to create an independent commission to remove politicians from the redistricting process. And that's what Chris Welch said he wanted to do in 2016. Chairman Hernandez replied that the Senate Republican and the Republican proposal, that the Republicans have been clear that their only goal is to rig the process to elect more right-wing candidates. And she's one of the people that voted for that House Joint Resolution back in 2016. So Representative Hernandez believes that the same exact bill she voted in favor for is now a tactic to elect more right-wing candidates in Illinois. Bottom line is that the Democrats have absolutely no intention of holding to their promises on fair maps, ones which they campaigned on, in a fair map process which over 600,000 Illinoisans signed a petition a few years ago to say that that is the way in which we should move forward. Take the pen out of the elected officials' hands. But what we're seeing right now, after all these high hopes back in the beginning of the year with the new speaker, is that the House Democrats are reverting back to the same business model which put this state into peril. The same business model which has led to the single largest public corruption investigation in the state of Illinois, which has now brought some 6 former House and Senate Democrats who are defendants in the federal courthouse in Chicago over corruption charges, and also more investigations and charges to come. The hypocrisy is at the highest level that I have ever witnessed in my life. We are not going to see anything close to fair maps, and I think we can talk a little bit about how these hearings have gone. I've gone to every one of them. Now, I've been to 2 or 3 of them. I've watched most of them. Every witness from every advocacy group has said clearly the legislature should not be in the business of drawing their districts. Every hearing we've had that said loud and clear. And also, you can't use the ACS data. It's just not right. It's not a proper foundation for us to be able to draw these legislative districts. So, as we said here earlier, today is to remind Democrats and Illinois citizens that they have a responsibility. They have a great responsibility as being in control in both chambers, and they need to live up to their past. Don't fool the public anymore.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.